Thank you very much. So welcome everybody. My name's Miro Griffiths. I am a disabled activist and researcher. I live just across the border of Wales on the Wirral. Um, and I have a particular interest in young people's participation in all areas of society. And I have a particular interest in disability arts, and that's why I've known Ruth for many years. And it's a pleasure, absolute pleasure to be here. In terms of description, I'm wearing a red jumper and I have a beard, which is probably a little bit unkempt and not tidied up. And I have fairly long hair, which has been combed back in this usual mess of staying inside all the time. So why are we doing today? Well, today is a really important opportunity to think about the participation of young disabled people within the arts. And not only does this mean participating in the arts and experiencing the arts, but I also want us to think about opportunities to influence the direction of the arts and to have a voice in shaping the current and future direction of the arts within Wales and beyond. And this is important because when we think about disability, we have to make sure that we focus on those unnecessary barriers that are put in place that restrict or deny young disabled people opportunities to do the things they want to do with their life. And of course, today we'll be focusing specifically on the arts. But this is about recognizing that for many young disabled people across the country, there is restrictions and there is a lack of choice and control. And this comes from the way that we arrange society. So for those of you who are familiar with the social model of disability, I'm talking about those kind of principles of what do we need to do to change the way that we think about and engage with disabled people and develop policies for opportunities, and of course the built environment as well. And these are a lot of the issues that were picked up in the excellent report created by Disability Arts Cymru, highlighting those barriers that were experienced by young disabled people as they participate in the arts. And this matters not just because of all of us who are interested in the arts, but it matters also because if we look at legislation within the UK, or we look beyond that and think about important things like the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Disabled People, there is clear recognition to disabled people having access to participate in cultural life, recreation, and have opportunities to work. And of course, for many of the people who've spent years developing their skills of being excellent in demonstrating their art, this is for them a profession or something that they want to work in the future. So we really need to think about what we're doing to identify those barriers, but also to improve access and participation. So what we'll do today is we'll have a panel discussion until 4:45. And I'm now going to ask each panel member to introduce himself. And could I ask you to say your name, where you're from, and 1 or 2 sentences on why participating in the arts is important to you. So can I first ask Jake to do that, please?
Hi everyone, thanks for having me here today. My name is Jake Sawyers. I am from Cardiff in South Wales, and the arts are really important to me. It's always been something that I've participated in from an extremely young age. I'm severely sight impaired and have been since birth, and I feel like participating in the arts, whether that be performing, singing, dancing, it's always been something I've been able to do more independently than other things. And you know, it's my profession now. I'm an actor and workshop facilitator, so from a really young age it sort of laid the foundation for what I've wanted to do with my life.
Thank you, Jake. Can I now ask Danielle to do the same, please? Oh, I think you're muted, Danielle. I'm afraid I can't hear Danielle.
I can hear you, Danielle, but I'm not sure about everyone else.
I can hear you, Danielle.
I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Creative. I've always loved drama and games and activities that get me involved with things, and I just think it's so important to have that creativity in a blind person and let go and get involved with things, and also then pass that on to other people and inspire people with drama and with activities like that. So that's why I think creative arts and performing is really close to my heart personally.
Thank you, Danielle. And I can hear you now. It was something to do with my interpretation.
Okay.
So apologies for that. Can I now ask Miranda to do the same, please?
Noswaith dda, everybody. I'm so delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me. So my name's Miranda Ballin, and I'm based up in the South Wales Valleys, though I'm Cardiff born, but I've lived here for years now, so I'm a bit of a South Wales woman. I've got two hats, really. I'm the artistic director of Spark, which is Valleys Kids Youth Arts Project, which is a community development organisation. And I'm also the chair of the Youth Arts Network Cymru, YANC we call it. And YANC is there for, it's a practitioner-led workshop for youth arts practitioners. And the arts, I've been passionate about the arts and involved since I was a small child. It was the way that I made sense of the world myself, and it was the way that I could really sort of understand and interpret things. But I think as in my practice, the things that I most love about the arts is its ability, its creativity, but also its capacity to create change in society. So those are my two sort of passions. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Manai, and I've got a yellow headband on, and I'm in my studio in Glenhiron, which is near Carnarvon, and I have short hair, short brownish hair. I'm a designer and a creative practitioner, so I do creative workshops. So at the moment, I'm an innovation technician in Fuse. On a freelance basis, which is a little makerspace where I support businesses in the local community with different ideas using the machines that we have there. And then I also create artwork and create laser cuts, jewellery, and lots of different, I just dabble in a lot of different things really. So the art's been a really good creative outlet, really for the soul, I think, and also I think just meeting lots of different people. I think collaboration's been such a key part of it for me personally, with sharing ideas and sort of giving confidence in different areas of creating things. So yeah, that's why it's important to me. I think just meeting new people, I just love that about it.
And then we'll have, as I said, we'll have our break at 4:45. And then afterwards, we'll have a Q&A where we can pick up on some of the things discussed in everybody's presentation. And of course, if anybody has any questions, please start typing them into the Q&A so we can pick up on them after the break. So, Mene, can I start with you for the presentation? And what I'd like is for up to 5 minutes, and then just for all panelists, I will be a bit strict because of time, so I will have to gently interject if you reach the 5-minute mark. But I'd like you all to talk for up to 5 minutes, and in particular, think about the barriers, the key barriers when accessing and participating in the arts, and also from your perspective, what needs to happen to improve young disabled people's access to and participation within the arts. So Mene, if we start with you, do you want to share your slides? Or do you want to talk?
Yeah. Well, I'll just talk. I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's more relevant if I just talk about it, actually. But yeah, I think for me personally, after I graduated, especially, really, I wasn't sure what I was wanting to do. I knew that I sort of wanted to work with people and just get involved in lots of different things to learn as much as I could. So I wanted to stay local to Carnarvon, so I looked for a lot of different opportunities in the surrounding area. So I got involved with like arts collectives. So I got involved with Carnarvon Arts Regional Arts Network, and Glitch, an arts collective for young people in Mostyn Gallery in Llandudno. So that was a really good way for me to sort of have support in finding myself my creative flow, my groove in what I wanted to do. And I'd only recently been diagnosed with dyslexia the year before, so I was a bit like, I think I was lacking in confidence in sort of applying for jobs and things like that. I felt a bit I just felt a bit down, I think, with that. So it was really good to sort of meet other people that sort of in the same position, really, with, you know, just sort of finding what they wanted to do. And then I think like the greatest barrier for me was like with developing this sort of finding my path was finance, really. There wasn't a lot of financial things that paid, a lot of work that paid, really, to just get your foot in the door. So I did a lot of volunteering, which is fine because I balanced out with the waitressing job, but it was a bit of a juggle at the time, and I had very supportive family, which is very lucky. So I was very fortunate, really, in that sort of position. And then I think I was a bit afraid to tell people I was dyslexic as well, and dyslexic, but I've sort of grown to just accept it now, and I just tell people now. But yeah, so that's the main challenges for me, I think.
Thank you. And any ideas of what you think needs to happen? What's the most important thing to happen to address access?
I think just like research and marketing of it in a positive light. I think any changes to improve access is a positive one, and I think raising awareness is really important about different types of people, and how we can work together to produce new ideas and creative projects.
Great. Well, thank you. That's an excellent start to the conversation, really. I think, you know, there's some really excellent points raised there, which we'll pick up on in the Q&A later on. Thank you, Mene. Should we go to Miranda next?
Yeah, diolch, Mira. That's a great start to hear about Mene's experience. And I think to sort of jump in, I suppose with my hat on as the artistic director of Spark, which is a youth arts project in the Valleys, when I read the audit that came back, which has been such a powerful piece of work by Disability Arts Cymru, some of the issues that were underlying around barriers to engagement in the arts, I think can cut across all young people in the arts. You know, the experience of young people in the South Wales Valleys around transport, around issues of being able to access opportunities, and particularly about young people who are living in poverty. All of those things can prevent young people from being able to actively participate and be part of an experience.
Excuse me, can I interrupt? Sorry, it's Ruth here. We do need to change over the signers now. They're only supposed to go 20 minutes at a time. So can we change over? So sorry to interrupt, Miranda.
No worries.
Just once we got Catherine in the shop, we'll move over. Thank you.
Okay, are you ready, Catherine? Yeah, fabulous. Yeah, nice to see Catherine again. Yeah, I think that all of those areas are things that over the 20 odd years of experience of working in the arts in the South Wales Valleys have been really noticeable. And I really applaud the audit for picking up on those kind of, if you like, generic issues that can stop barriers to engagement. If you're a disabled young person, the likelihood is that all of those things will be even more exacerbated. And that's what really concerns me. And that's why I think that the work that Disability Arts Cymru are currently doing feels so important. I think that there are other kind of soft areas, if you like. So those areas are things that are built into a systemic system of discrimination. A world that already isn't making or allowing equal opportunities for all of its citizens. So for me, that's a core issue when we live in an unequal society and we don't take that sort of consideration. I think there are also sort of areas around the issues that Menai was raising around what happens if young people actually sort of lack a little bit of confidence, or a lot of the young people I work with, maybe it's an issue around self-esteem. Perhaps your family don't consider that the arts is a place for you or something that you should do. So how do we create the conditions under which people would be able to feel that the arts is for them? And how do we encourage disabled young people to feel that not only should the arts be for them, but that they can take a kind of leading role in the arts? So for me, again, this idea that young people can lead. Spark is a project that started out being, when I first started in South Wales Valleys, there was very little youth arts practice in the valleys, end of story. That project, while I'm standing here, really normally you would be speaking to one of the young people who is involved in our project, or the actual project itself, although my team are more like in their 30s, they were young people who came through Spark. So they now lead Spark. They are the people who make the decisions about the work that happens. And that's a powerful model for other people to know that young practitioners from the South Wales Valleys are leading that work. And I think that's what needs to happen. If we're moving on to what needs to happen with disabled young people, they need to be able to see themselves in the arts. They need to be represented. So yesterday I was at a youth arts network meeting, which Ruth attended, so moving on to what needs to happen. And Jason Camilleri, who's a Black artist and activist, raised the issue, can you think of any Black artists who are famous in Wales? And can you think of any disabled artists who are famous in Wales? And people really struggled with that. And his point was, if you can't see yourself in the arts, then how are you to believe that the arts is for you? So it's not all about being famous. There are amazing practitioners. And when we looked at that, there were a number of really outstanding practitioners in the field. But for me, if we're going to change things, then we need to give opportunity. So yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Miro. Thank you,
Miranda. So we got some really good kind of themes coming from the panel so far. You know, we've got ideas of the material issues around access in the community and finance and so on. But we've also got this issue around kind of culture in terms of representation and raising awareness and addressing people's attitudes. So this is really great. So now I'd like to turn to Danielle. Danielle, could you now talk a little bit on terms of key barriers and what are the key solutions to some of the issues that we've been talking about and things that you've experienced as well?
Absolutely. So I have been really involved in the arts for a while now. I am, I've always really loved drama. I've loved storytelling and being creative, writing, getting involved with different things. And I would say that I've been involved mainly in the performing side until I got older. And I would kind of say that doing performing arts core things at college, and I did a few youth groups, I think, for theatre, but I think a lot of people had a stigma that a blind person can't really act. If I was on a musical stage, there was a barrier there that you know, yes, you can get involved, but you've kind of got to stand at the back and not really learn the dances and not really have a main role, or not that you need to have a main character role, but be as involved as somebody else would be able to be. And maybe I'm not the best actor, but my skills are probably no different to anybody else's, despite my vision. And then I did my performing arts course at the Royal National College for the Blind in Hereford, where I met UCAN, which I'm representing today. And I worked with Alice, who was a facilitator there, and really learned that actually I really like helping people through drama. I would love to actually run my own workshops and discuss issues in today's world and make a difference that way. Obviously knowing that probably being an actress is not really the most accessible thing to be done as a blind person, because like that it's not very easy to access those possibilities or deal with the barriers of people putting barriers in front of you and making you feel that you can't achieve what you want to achieve. As well as, I think for me, the location, being from Devon, then moving to Hereford at the School for the Blind, and kind of moving around a bit, knowing that I didn't live in a big city where I couldn't just find a group that easily who would accept me. And I went to a school at the University of Wales, Trinity St David in Swansea, where I tried to carry on with what I was doing, and was unfortunately struggling there for other reasons, and moved on to continue my studies at Birmingham City University. So I'm definitely still trying to continue to become a workshop leader and facilitator, but obviously with COVID right now, that's not really happening, so that's on hold. But I would really say that for me, a lot of the barriers are mainly, firstly, location, of making sure that people can access these things, because if you can't get to them, if you can't leave your house and you can't get to them, and you've got a family working like that, if your family haven't got the possibility of getting you out, or they have their own jobs. I think a bit like Miranda said, that there are people who are not in the situation where they can necessarily just go and get involved that way. There's a lot of barriers behind that, and there's also a lot of stigma. People often think that a blind person can't act, or they can, but maybe without actually enjoying it, without being properly involved, or kind of being there on the side, or being minded by somebody else. I remember trying to join a few Andram groups, and people being quite shocked because I tried to join because the scripts weren't in Braille. What was I going to do? And obviously now we have technology to make that available. I'd say things that really I would like to change would be to educate people, to really tell people who are actually running these arts events and facilitation workshops and projects that I can do things. Just send the scripts in Braille, send them in, an email, like an audio version. There's plenty of ways of accessing drama and theatre and projects. And I think a lot of it as well is educating the other young people who are sighted. I'm in a class of 30 currently in Birmingham City University, and I was in a class of 12 in the University of Wales. And I just found that a lot of people kind of naturally just bumped me to the side of the group, when actually I've been facilitating and doing projects a lot longer. Not that made my skills more worthwhile, but people often assume that you can't. And as someone who really loves to make a difference and really aspires to make a difference, it feels so negative being denied or kind of looked aside a little bit, when you actually know that you've got a lot of ideas and a lot of personal experience which can give you an insight that maybe you could really help out. So I think that's mainly what I would have to say, personally, for my experience of training and learning that way.
Thank you, Danielle. That's really powerful and really excellent. And in particular, I think something we'll go back to in the discussion and Q&A is certainly that issue of stigma and how we address this important issue. So again, if people have any questions about stigma or about anything else, please do use the Q&A to raise some points. Jake, can we go to you now, please?
Hi everyone. Some tough acts to follow. Great things said there by my fellow participants. I 100% agree with everything that is said so far. If I wasn't on mute, you could have heard me clapping down the lens. I'm probably going to split mine up into two sections. One, my viewpoints from somebody who has participated in the arts from a young age and somebody who now delivers arts events and workshops to young people. When I was growing up, participating in the arts was something I did with the majority of my time. I'm from Port Talbot, and a lot of it was potluck. So you'd turn up to some things and maybe the person running that workshop would have made it accessible because maybe their father or grandfather was visually impaired, so they know how to, do those workshops for a visually impaired person. But then other workshops you'd go to and some people wouldn't have had experience with disability, so it was a lot of potluck and a lot of what that person had been through personally. I'm 26, now I go to things and there's training for things like that, but when I was younger there wasn't so much of that. But then when I was about 12 years old, I was lucky enough to get involved with UCAN Productions, which is who I'm here representing today. UCAN is a performing arts cooperative for young visually impaired people and their friends. And UCAN taught me how to be confident with my visual impairment, taught me how to self-advocate for myself. So if I was found in a situation where my needs weren't being met, I could combine my working class Port Talbot background, where I would just say anything, and my newfound confidence, my disability confidence, and I could tell people what I needed in a succinct and practical way. I then went on to train as an actor at UWTSD in Carmarthen. I graduated about 6 years ago. Feels less than that, but it's been a long time. And I had a first in acting. So now it's been making the transition from somebody who participates to somebody who is a professional actor and also leads those workshops. And my viewpoints as a workshop leader, it's really echoing what Miranda said. It's, for me, all about having role models, all about seeing yourself doing what you want to do. I really, really appreciate the work I've been able to do with UCAN Productions. I used to participate in workshops, and now I run those workshops for the new generation of visually impaired people. And even over COVID time, individuals have reached out to UCAN saying, I need to speak to Jake, I'm struggling. And as a 26-year-old disabled actor who can't get a lot of work in the mainstream performing industry, to be asked for my advice from younger people is just, I'm ridiculously honored to have that privilege and to be able to point others in the direction, something I didn't really have when I was younger. I had great intervention when I was younger, but not always from people like me, people who are disabled and people with visual impairments. So that's sort of my story. But talking about the barriers, which is what we're here to talk about, I've had to adjust things on site. I've had to make scripts bigger. I've not always been able to access space. I've always had to negotiate lighting. Those are barriers. They're all things we can fix quite easily. But I think the biggest barriers for me are attitudes, people looking at you as a disability. Weirdly happens more now as I'm older, looking for acting work. When I was younger, I could just show off and be a kid. But now, if I go into an audition, sometimes I'm automatically seen as a disability. I'm already on a lower playing field than anyone else, and to have to, self-advocate for yourself in those situations and, tell yourself, you're good and you deserve this is, quite emotionally exhausting. So that's the biggest actual barrier for me. And in terms of what needs to happen, I think everything needs to be a bit more regulated. I think more training needs to be given to people who may not necessarily have that training. And I think just attitudes need to change, and we need to see more disabled people doing it rather than just talking about it. Like I said, I'm 26. I've been to a lot of things and I've heard a lot of talk and I've seen a lot of action as well. We've come such a long way as a community, but I think there needs to be a lot more action and a lot more just doing it. Jake out.
You, Jake. That's great. Thank you, Jake. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left now before the break. Again, just check with the BSL interpreters. Are you happy? Do you need to do you need to transfer over? Or should I carry on for 5 minutes? Okay. So in terms of the next 5 minutes, what we'll do is if we open up our discussion, and then we'll take a break for access needs, and then of course we can continue our discussion and bring in any questions or comments by people in the audience. One thing that has really struck me in listening to the panel is this emphasis placed on raising awareness, and it's almost there's kind of two areas here that I think are really interesting. One is raising awareness of those people in the system who are creating opportunities or supporting people to have access to the arts, and thinking about their knowledge about disability rights and disabled people's access needs. But there's also this question around raising awareness or raising people's aspirations who are disabled themselves. And maybe that's about knowing people's rights or knowing what you're entitled to, so that you can demand that rather than kind of just accept what is happening. So my question to the panel at this point then is it really important then that we have training for those two groups, those who are delivering opportunities and making sure that they are aware of their obligations, but also ensuring that there is training and support for disabled artists to know about their rights and know about what they can demand or expect to experience when accessing the arts? Let me go to Miranda first.
I think both of them are crucial. That's my feeling, because I think that it's always the same. We always want to be at a stage where we hope that we no longer have to educate people about inequality and stigma and all the things that get in the way of people being able to be the wonderful, extraordinary, creative people they are. But I think that is an ongoing thing, and you're always bringing people in. So for the Youth Arts Network or somewhere like that, it's a process of continuing to ensure that people come into that field really get the social model of disability. But then I equally think that young disabled people can't be hanging around waiting for people to take up that education. And there's nothing more powerful than being in a situation where you are, if you like, confronted, or at least you know that people have got the confidence to be able to speak up and say what it is that they want themselves. But I suppose the one thing I would say in that, Miro, is that in that role, I don't think that young people who want to be great artists always have to feel that they have to represent. We should get to the stage where they're able to make and create their art, and they can do that work if they want to, and that's part of their right. So whilst it's really important to encourage people to be activists, I also think that people need to be able to feel that there's some times when they're able to step down from that and be able to make and create their own work. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear if other people feel the same.
Let's pick up on that, because I think that's a really important point, that the idea of, you know, a disabled artist doesn't necessarily have to represent the disabled people's community in the art, and sometimes that can become the pressure then. And also the problem then is that organizations say, well, look, there are these great examples, so we're doing something, so we don't need to do anything else. So I think that's a really interesting point raised by Miranda. Does anybody want to pick up on that? Jake?
Can everyone hear me? There we go, I'm unmuted.
Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree with Miranda on the last point. Disability activism can be hard work. Not everyone wants to do it. It's something that I do a lot of. It's not my life. I could definitely be doing more, but yeah, I don't think it should be pushed on anyone at all. I think it's important that you're able to advocate your needs and things like that, but I definitely think it's necessary. You should do that at your own pace. And I think it's all about meeting in the middle. I think it's about people who don't have experience of disability need to more education on the matter, and then also us as disabled people need to be open and willing to answer questions, appropriate questions in appropriate settings, and be able to teach people about our world and the extraordinary ways in which we work in.
Thank you, Jake. And if I go back to Danielle, you talked
Yeah.
about that, the importance of kind of challenging stigma. I'm just wondering then, do you think training and specific support to build disabled people's understanding of what they should expect to get, and also what organizations should be doing to support disabled people, is that a way forward through this, do you think?
I would kind of really in some ways agree with what Miranda and Jake have said before. Like, in some ways, absolutely, it's I think that we can do things. There might need to be adaptations done for us, maybe in small ways. But if we are artists and we have our art and we have our talents and our interests, then we can do it too. I think that's a huge thing. And I think I think in 2020 we've had to adapt now, especially with COVID, to art online. We've had probably more this year with Black Lives Matter, which needs to carry on improving itself anyway, and LGBT acceptance and all kinds of acceptances, and they all need to improve, and disability is no different. I think absolutely people need to be aware that they don't just have to hire somebody or get involved somebody who's not part of any minority group, and disabled people are just as capable, and sometimes more so with our experiences. And I think in some ways it is useful for us to have some training or information, but then I don't think in some ways that we should be here's what you should expect from people, or maybe I think it's important we do know, but I think sometimes the change needs to be made as well. We can't just kind of expect the people who we're trying to work with to reject us, or I think we need to kind of find ways of definitely being active in promoting it, but also like we said before, we're not all activists. And I mean, like, there are times where I've said, okay, I would love to explain to you how I can get involved, but other times I just want to be an artist, not the blind person in the group of students doing applied theatre, just me. And I think it's really, really, really important that we just get the opportunity to be involved. And I think, like I said before, with UCAN, when I actually first did my first project with UCAN, I met people like Jake, and I realised, wow, there's loads of blind people being facilitators already who are running workshops and getting involved, and actually realised that it's possible. I think that was a big eye opener for me.
Thank you, Danielle. That's really helpful. And I'm conscious of time, so Mene, if it's okay with you, can I come to you after the break, and then we can continue the conversation on from there. So welcome back, everybody. It's a pleasure to have everybody in the room. So as I said at the beginning, just to remind anybody who may have forgot or wasn't listening, that's absolutely fine. We will now go until about 5:25, so just over half an hour, and we'll continue our discussion, and we'll also have the opportunity to bring people in. So if you have any comments that you'd like to raise, I'm assuming, is the raise hand function working on the Zoom? Do we have that as an option for people to indicate?
It is possible, but it's kind of difficult to spot because it goes away quite quickly. So I suggest using the chat now. Okay. If you want a question. So the chat's still open. Just say, got a question, then we can come to you and you can ask the question. Okay, perfect. So yeah, so if anyone has a question or a comment or reflection they want to make, write in the chat and then we'll come to you. So before we move on towards expanding it out, just kind of continue our conversation we were having before. And just hear your thoughts really on that really interesting ideas of one hand training, but also Jake made this really important point about regulation, and there needs to be more rigor in the system to make sure that actually we are abiding by people's needs and making sure that people get support when they need support in the right way. I'm just interested to hear what your observations are.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have more training opportunities for, especially as a workshop facilitator. I feel like there could be more opportunities to have professional development in that aspect. I did do a workshop, I think, with disability arts a few years ago through working as a graphic design intern with Rawfest. So that was really beneficial for me, but I feel like I could, oops, I just threw a pen, sorry. Yeah, I think like I would be more than open. Yeah, that was from you. Yeah. I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name. I feel awful. Yeah, so yeah, I feel like there should be more opportunity to do that now as a freelancer. That'd be great. With regulating it, I think like maybe there could be a grant for it for freelancers to get that sort of training. Obviously that's a lot to ask for, but maybe that sort of thing, or that of the organisations hosting the events maybe have an obligation to provide some sort of training for long-term projects and short-term projects. That would be fantastic, really. I think it's really important as well, like Jake was talking about role models. I think that's really important as well. You can learn a lot from different types of people as well. So I think, you know, having that training feeds back then into this system, isn't it? And with providing inspirational role models for young people to follow in a way.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
I think, you know, that idea of a grant or allocated funding, I think is really key. And I suppose it goes back to Miranda's point before about how, you know, there needs to be a recognition of the systemic discrimination that have been experienced by disabled people. So actually, to mitigate that, one hand, you want change in people's attitudes and policies, is that correct? But we also need to recognize that disabled people experience additional costs. And I think Danielle talked about that before in her introduction, that, you know, there needs to be some funding to address those issues and to support that longevity of engaging in projects and developing skills. And that's maybe something we want to talk about a little bit later on. But I just want to give this opportunity to ask if anybody in the audience would like to raise any comments or reflections. It doesn't have to be a question; it can just be a reflection. But is there anything that anybody would like to say? I'll just give that a few seconds to a minute, see if anybody's got anything to say. Oh, okay. I think Sarah Beer, is it?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Miro. Yeah, I think everybody here knows me. I'm Sarah. I'm the Performance Art and Creative Word Officer for Disability Arts Cymru. I just wanted to ask Jake and Menai if they feel as though young people are at the current time sort of happy to identify as disabled in their experience, or whether young people you meet are still quite reticent about sort of owning up to having any sort of impairment, or wanting to join a group specifically for disabled people. Just wondered what your experiences were on that.
Thank you, Sarah. I think that's a great question. Should we go to Jake first?
Hi, Sarah. Lovely to see you.
Hiya, sweetie.
Oh gosh, it's like it's almost a comedy sketch the way I you know, self monologue how I identify as an actor. Some days I'm a Welsh disabled gay blind actor, then the next day I'm just an actor. It's so hard to know that whatever I put on my title, how other people are going to interpret that, because, you know, I'm a very proud disabled actor, but I don't always have to play a disabled role. But then if there is a disabled role, you know, a visual impaired role, I'm more than happy to, you know, do that as well. So it's such a ever-changing thing, and such an emotional issue as well of what you identify as. And I think especially for a lot of our young people, UCAN, who are involved with UCAN, but also other arts things and sports things, it's so you know, they don't like being identified as disabled or having any physical things that instantly outs them as visually impaired or disabled, especially in school, using specialist equipment. So I think being taught to be proud and being able to positively advocate for your needs and your own disability and your own abilities is just a really important thing to teach from the off. And like in terms of training and things like that, I think it needs to just be a bit cooler, a bit more exciting, because we're all such natural problem solvers. And when I tell people the way I do things, like I'm a film editor, I'm a drag queen, like, and people are like amazed at how I can do these things. And I think if we can bring more of that into training, it's going to have much more of an emotional impact on people, so they will utilize it in their lives and their practices.
Thank you, Jake. Mene.
Sorry. Yeah, I think that's a really cool idea, really, of involving a lot more examples of people with disabilities doing all sorts of things. I think that's really cool to incorporate that in training. It's exciting. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the question. It's so.
Sarah, do you want to summarize your question?
So sorry.
No, yeah, that's all right, man. No, it was just whether, in your experience, you found young disabled people were happy to identify as disabled, or whether people were much more reticent about talking about their impairment and just not wanting to get involved with anything that was specifically for disabled young people.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag in a way. As Jake was saying, like, it depends what you're involved in. And I think for me, like on a personal level, I found it quite hard to sort of tell people that I had dyslexia, because a lot of people didn't understand it. And I didn't really understand it myself in a way. So I think because it's a way of thinking and it has different things, elements to it. So I think like there's a mixed bag, but I think again with meeting supportive people, I think maybe young people are a bit reluctant to begin with, but then open up. It's like a gaining of trust, I think, with that sort of community group type thing. With jobs and things, I think it's a whole other ball game in a way. It depends where you're applying. But yeah, I think with it's building trust, I think is the main thing, and then people open up. But for me personally, I put myself as a designer and creative practitioner first, and then I sort of get into my needs as a person with learning disabilities after, in a way, because it's that's the way I've approached it. But everybody's different, aren't they?
Yeah,
so
sure.
yeah.
Thanks, Manai.
Yeah.
Can we open that question just to Miranda or Danielle? Is there anything that you would like to add to this? Should we go to Miranda first?
Yeah, it feels to me, said that it is such a useful question. From the experience of working with young people, specifically in the valleys, I feel like it's a little bit of a process. So I can relate in a way, listening to Menai talking about some young people need that time and space to really discover their own identity and to be supported by that, with that. And then having fantastic role models and people who they can suddenly feel they identify with can really make people have that kind of like confidence to say, actually, I'm prepared to lead first with saying, I'm a disabled practitioner, because I know that I am not going to face that discrimination. And I think that one of the things that I've learned is I've had to learn as a non-disabled person working with young disabled people is let's make sure that we have multiple entry levels. So not everybody is in the same place. So let's make sure that, if someone is incredibly confident, then don't pull them back. Let them go and let them lead. If they need support, then be that person who's going to support them. And Ruth's put a really useful thing. Why wouldn't she? That context is everything. So it's not, I don't think we can be in a situation where we say one size fits all with anyone, and we definitely can't say that when we're talking about disabled young people in the arts.
Thank you, Miranda. Danielle, is there anything you would like to add at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously at the moment still in training, so I obviously haven't maybe reached as many people as Jake or Miranda or Mene has. But I mean, I'm still training, and I still meet people who I'm encouraging to get involved with things like you can, or like other things. Even recently now, I have a couple of friends of mine who are visually impaired who have perhaps been a bit isolated during lockdown. I've said to them, look, you know, it'd be really nice for you to come and join these sessions. Maybe you could really find it a way of meeting other people and getting some creative kind of ideas and being involved with some projects. One of my friends recently said to me, I feel like I've got my creativity back. I lost something, you know, before lockdown, and really found myself losing myself. And another of my friends hasn't quite got involved with yet, but is kind of struggling with keeping motivated. I think some people, obviously very much what you said, one size does not fit all. There are some people I know who probably would be like, oh, you know what, I'd rather just join a normal drama group rather than not necessarily go and meet people that are just disabled. But I think there definitely are people who do really find it beneficial to meet people. And I think for me, definitely, when I met UCAN and when I met other people through UCAN, through studying, and I've kind of realised, you know what, there are people out there doing the sort of job that I want to do. And, you know, discovering that I wasn't born wanting to be a drama practitioner. I was born a person who wanted to do drama, and I think it really took seeing organisations making a difference for me to go, that is the area that I want to be in, because that is the area that's making a difference in the world now. I think, you know, definitely some people will be out there and probably won't want to mix with people who are just blind or just disabled, and some people also who are blind or disabled will assume that as a blind person I would naturally just join groups for blind people, which I have to sometimes correct and say, actually, you know what, I also do things with non-disabled people because I can act just the same as them. I think very much what you said, one size does not fit all. I think it's a totally different situation for everyone, but you know, definitely it's really, really important to encourage people getting involved with these projects, because they don't aim to wrap you up as a disabled, you know, art creator. They aim to actually bring you into a community and then push you out to do what you want to achieve. I think that's really vital for people to be encouraged to really reach out and take hold of these opportunities.
Thank you, Danielle. And I mean, as somebody who's just listening to everyone's idea, what I think is really fascinating about that question, and thank you to Sarah for raising it, is actually that journey that Miranda was talking about, that idea that, well, as you progress and you think about your identity as a disabled person, it will then affect and change the way that you may engage at different parts of your autistic journey. So, you know, for me, as somebody who thinks that, well, to be a disabled person, it's a political identity, you're highlighting the injustices within society. And as you become more aware of that, you then start to think about, well, what do you want to change on an individual level, but also on a collective level within the community and beyond. And I just, you know, I think, you know, that point about that Jake raised about, you know, the different ways in which disabled people are creative to address and demonstrate skills, but also to navigate some of these problems and barriers that people experience, I think is quite key. So I've got a question on that, but I'll just hold on that for a second in case I'm taking too much of the limelight. Is there any other comments or questions by anybody in the room? Any reflections? I'll just give it a few seconds in case anybody is writing anything, or you can just signal to me. Otherwise, I'll just continue with my questions. I got lots of questions.
Okay, we're just changing interpreters now. Thank you.
Okay. Well, if I can continue my questions then. So just building on that, I was thinking about Jake's that point by Jake around like the creativity of salespeople engaging in different areas. How important then is it for the panel that that young disabled people are in these positions of influencing these debates and these discussions about what we do? Because we've talked about the importance of training, we've talked about the importance of grants to support salespeople, but I suppose that the question is it necessary that young disabled people are in these positions of influencing and determining what the agenda is and what we're discussing and what we're trying to change for the better? Can we go to Jake first?
Yeah, I think it is really important. It's definitely something that I didn't aim to do, but definitely in the last 5 years, I've I've become a bit of an activist. I create content for BBC Wales about my sight loss. I recently made one that had a good bit of reach about how difficult it is to social distance when you have a sight impairment or any other disability as well. But I'm still very much on the journey of finding out your relationship with your disability is something that changes every day. And I feel like I have to be an activist because sometimes I feel like it's the only thing I can do. I do it for myself as much as I do it for other people. So I think there's definitely a need for disabled people advocating for themselves, making decisions, being in those positions of power and authority. But also, I know people who are not disabled, people who have supported me, my parents, Jane from UCAN, Bernie from UCAN, are always there to have my back when I get up that day and I don't want to be disabled, and I get up and I don't want to advocate for my own needs. So it is very important, but it's very emotionally draining. Like, I went to university and got my degree. I was well supported by the university. It wasn't perfect, but I am the sort of person who will exhaust myself making my own materials and scripts accessible so I can join in rather than not. It's not the most efficient way of working, but it's what is currently working for me. So it's great, but it should come with a disclaimer.
No, that's really helpful. Miranda, if we can go to you, just picking up on those kind of the points that Jake was talking about, the kind of the personal or emotional, factors that come in with trying to explore and trying to challenge these issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Jake is saying is absolutely crucial. I mean, tonight, ideally, it wouldn't be me here. It would be to a young woman and a young man that I'm working with currently who are absolutely disabled activists in their own right. But at the moment, that's just not possible for them because, the level of exhaustion of just trying to live day to day currently in the current situation, they need to be fed and they need to be nourished. So all the work we're doing at the moment is about developing their creative writing and their skills. And at the moment, they don't have the energy for advocacy. But that will come back. And when it does come back, I am no substitute for them. I am a poor substitute for them being the people who will get up and say what really matters to them. But some of the things that Niamh in particular raised, I suppose what I would say about what Jake is saying about amazing, extraordinary people like Jane as well is being an ally. And being an ally is knowing when to step out of the light, and being an ally is knowing when to step forward because actually you're needed really alongside, and when to step right away and be prepared to step right away. So I suppose that relationship is really important. But if you're asking me, is it crucial that ultimately we have that that, for example, an organisation like Disability Arts Wales, Cymru, in the way that Ruth and Sarah and the team are envisaging building a youth-led capacity within DAC, I absolutely think that's what's needed. But alongside that, there has to be great allyship, and there also has to be people who will fight alongside people with discrimination, resources, and all the things that are needed, so that actually Jake isn't spending all his time running around doing his own scripts, when really he should be just creating great theatre.
So if I just turn to Danielle, I suppose there's two questions here. One is, how important is it that young people are in a position to lead and to influence? And then the second question, if you want to take it now, we can come back to it later on, is this question of allyship, and how do we ensure that that we know about, and that there are these allies who are there to help us in these different positions?
I would say that very much similar to what Jake and Miranda have already said, that it is exhausting to constantly be saying, I'm Danielle, I'm blind, I'm an actor, I can get involved with this, and I'm, really keep pushing for your own involvement in things, because really, I'm sure everyone probably in a similar situation would probably agree, I don't really want to have to do that every day. I would like to just jump in and do some theatre. I'd like to just be able to run a group and not have to think, about explaining that I can, or I'd like to be able to write something and think, what, I'd like to actually cast my own people, even though I can't necessarily see. I'd love to be able to just say I'm an artist, I'm a drama practitioner, I'm an actor, I'm a facilitator, I'm a workshop leader, and not have to think, I'm a blind workshop leader. I think when I am with people that are not disabled, generally I find myself constantly having to, or not even having to, but feeling like I have to keep justifying myself. And I know sometimes when I do it, I think I don't need to do that. I'm in this situation, I've got my leg through the door, I'm actually here on this course or doing this particular opportunity. I don't have to keep explaining myself or justifying myself. But I think, when you want opportunities to come from others, and when you want to get involved with things, you really have to push to constantly get recognised. And I think sometimes even accepted in a peer group of other sighted or non-disabled people, you really have to constantly defend yourself or feel you might need to do that when it's not necessary, and we shouldn't have to do that. On the other hand, it is good to try and promote things and try and say, look, guess what, I can do this. But like Jake said, there are days where I just want to just do some drama because I'm tired or I'm stressed or I actually need an outlet and an escape, and that's what I love doing. It should be my hobby, not something I have to really navigate as a blind person. And as well, I think allies are really important, and I think in some ways allies are great to advocate, and allies are great to help guide and encourage. I think that's really, really important, and UCAM really does that. But there are other things that allies, I think, can do. I think probably both my universities, I've been at UWTSD and Birmingham City University, and I think the lecturers in both places, I was very lucky that I had fantastic lecturers who have not necessarily fought for me to do things, but they have sent opportunities forward. They've said, there's a project here, there's a the online webinar, or there's a talk, or there's a project to work with or watch. People haven't, but I've kind of made an effort to go along, and generally I've often been the only person who's gone along, which is a shame that other people haven't. But I think it's felt very good that I've actually, someone's given me this opportunity to go and do things, and I've actually phoned up the place or gone to the group and said, hi, I'm Danielle, blind, you want to join in? And then actually had a really great experience and actually reported back to my sighted peers and said, oh, I was at that performance the other day, or I was actually at that project, that group. So I think allies can definitely help in take away the advocacy, take away the searching for opportunities and checking out if they're accessible or not, actually kind of maybe open a few doors for you. That's something that was really important, I think, is maybe allowing us to find the places where we can be accepted and find the doors that are open to us, which is definitely something that's draining to do as a blind person, or any disability. So I think that's a way that I find allies important, is absolutely fight for our rights, absolutely kind of educate and make resources to make people realise we can do things, but primarily just hand us opportunities and let us step forward and take them. And that's really something I'm very, very thankful for my allies for giving me that freedom, really.
Thank you. That's such relevance to what we've been talking about throughout the whole day, the whole hour, I should say, in terms of ideas around giving people support, giving people specific opportunities to have those positions of demonstrating your work and skill, and also then, if you want to, becoming a representative of what we should be aiming for and what we should be aspiring for, which is more disabled people in positions of arts. Mene, is there anything that you'd like to add in terms of?
Sorry, we've just changed interpreters, so if you want to put in Kathleen onto the screen, then that would be great. She's back now.
Okay, thank you. Mene, is there anything you would like to add at this point in terms of the importance of young people leading on some of these issues that we're talking about, or indeed the role of allies?
I think it is crucial, and like that's the way I got into the arts, is by having that support of being given the opportunity to lead workshops, and I think like that's it's just essential, I think, to develop a diverse pool of creative people with different backgrounds. It's so important, and it gives people from different backgrounds the opportunity to give it a go as well. I think that's it's really important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm conscious of time. We're coming to probably the last final 4 minutes or so before I hand over to Ruth to bring this to a close. I think if I just reflect, and what I'm going to do is, if I just reflect on a few things for me as a host that I think has been really significant, and then I'll offer an opportunity for anybody on the panel, if they have anything kind of final words they want to say, really, in terms of key things to raise or important things to raise, if you haven't had the chance to do so already. But I think what's fascinating, I thought, is there's been this, we've focused on issues around finance, and that idea of trying to improve participation also requires us to think about this issue of systemic discrimination, and that has links to issues around poverty, which was highlighted as well. And then there's a question of kind of the role of other people, and we can think about that in terms of family and the role of family in supporting us, or perhaps even discouraging us. I think there was a comment in the chat about how sometimes families new to the world of disability aren't aware or familiar with issues of rights or social model thinking and so on. And then there's a question around those kind of the material barriers in terms of transport. And I think something that Danielle said, which I think was really interesting, is that kind of thinking about the local area and thinking about the opportunities within that locality. And often sometimes certain accessible environments are drawn to certain cities or certain larger places, and that means that there's a real difference in experience for disabled people across different geographical locations. And then when we think about things to achieve or things that we want to move towards, I sense that there was comments about the importance of making specific opportunities and marketing specific opportunities for disabled people to be aware of, so that can gain opportunities to engage in arts, but also to have their needs met and support. And then there's these general points about raising awareness amongst people who organize the spaces for artists, but also non-disabled people and non-disabled artists involved in the collaborations that artists may have with each other, and thinking about their role in being familiar or being aware of the importance of ensuring that disabled people have their needs met and are able to be included within that space as well. And of course that extends then to disabled artists themselves, knowing about their rights and knowing about what to demand and what they should expect from society in terms of inclusion and accessibility. But I think that that really important point made by everybody about how there's a need to recognize that it is quite exhausting, the experience of always fighting and challenging, and actually that needs to be built into the way that we deliver support and the way that we provide opportunities for artists. So is there anything that the panel would like to say? I'm going to come to each of you in turn. You don't have to say anything because you've all raised excellent points. But if there's anything you want to say, and because of time, it has to be very quick, only a few words really. But if we go to Jake first.
I think I've just been thinking in the last few minutes about what was successful for me being involved in the arts, and UCAN is one example, and I've also been a part of a lot of other organizations, but I was never made to feel disabled. I know there was a huge amount of work going on in the background to make me not feel disabled, and to be able to make sure I was able to access space, make sure I was able to get there via transport, read the scripts and things like that. And now I work for UCAN and I'm on the other side of that, and Jane has told me how it all works. You know, I have just huge admiration for the allies and the people who are running the organizations, because you know, as much as UCAN is for visually impaired people and their friends, when you're there, it doesn't feel like it at all. And I think that's what makes UCAN and I think all the other organizations so successful as well. It's not about being disabled when you're in the room and you finally got over all those barriers. It's then time to make the art.
Thank you, Jake. Mene, is there anything, any final words? And I'm afraid there will have to only be words, I'm afraid, because we've short on time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been really interesting listening to everybody talk about their different experiences. And
well, thank you for the opportunity to listen to you. It's been excellent. Danielle, is there anything you'd like to raise?
Yeah, just again, thank you for having me. Really appreciate that. And actually, I find it so reassuring as someone who's training and changed universities twice and about to, stopped because of COVID and everything that's going on, that there are people meeting today to push for the things that I dream about doing, and hearing from Jake and Menai and Miranda making a difference in her group, that people are actually really pushing to make the area that I really am desperate to step into a better place. And I think what with COVID now, I think that's a really positive thing, that we are finding ways of coming together and making a difference. And that really means a great deal to me as somebody who wants to step into that role and make a difference in the future. So just thank you for realising my confidence really in the world and in the industry.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you. Miranda, any final words?
Just highlights the crucial importance of organisations like UCAN and DAC for me. Absolutely critical. Yeah. So and remembering the extraordinary capacity of the young disabled youth artists who are here tonight just highlights that. So massive thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. It's been a great experience, and thank you to the panelists for giving up their time and also, of course, their ideas and expertise in this area. And thank you to all the tech people and people behind the scenes and people providing support to make this accessible. Ruth, can I go to you to give some final words about what happens next?
Okay, thank you ever so much, Miro. I think he's chaired both meetings we've had on this subject incredibly well and articulated the issues that are coming out. And it's great to get these put down on paper and for people to realise the voices who are involved in wanting to be a real part of the arts, not just passive receivers of the arts, but to use the arts to develop careers if they want to develop their activism if they want to. It's all about choice, really. But many disabled young people and deaf young people don't get the positive role models at an early enough age to actually think that could be my direction in life. And DAC wants to do that. We are mainly an organisation of disabled and deaf people, and we've been there. We know what it's like. We're working in this company because we want to be more activists to raise their lives around to be in the arts and make opportunities in the arts. And the idea from this is to try and get a youth leadership group who can actually be a resource for any arts organisations in Wales. We want them to have a real ambassadorial role. So we want to look into funding so that they can be paid to be able to do that sort of work. But it will be something that they can really develop themselves in as well, to speak into places and to bring change. But at the same time, it's hard being an activist all the time. As Jake so eloquently put it before, you just want to be someone who does the things you want to enjoy. But the sad news is disabled people, deaf people are often marginalised. And using that word in a way that we are minoritized, we are put into the sidelines and not really included into everyday life opportunities. We're trying to change that scene from every angle, from doing disability equality training to arts organisations, to challenging people in their policies. But the biggest thing I want to be doing more of is creating those amazing arts moments, the creativity that we can do from the lived experience of disability. So I'm interested in people who want to do disability arts work and be disability artists, to disabled people who want to work in the arts. There's a range of where we need to be, and to just have our identity really recognised within the whole offer of the arts sector. So that's what we want to move on to doing. We're on our way now. Next week, Lowry comes back off her maternity leave and we'll take this on as her main role. We'll look forward to seeing what we're going to get up to next. But can I thank you all on behalf of DAC for coming tonight, for sharing, but don't leave it here. We want to keep on working with you and inputting, but really big thank you to all our support workers and for Miro for doing a great job of chairing. We really do thank you. I look forward to hearing more from you. Thank you, young people, for your amazing input. And I just hope we get to meet you all in the flesh one day. Wasn't it great when we can return to real life again instead of always through Zooms? But thank you, everyone. Keep well, keep safe, and a big deal.
Yo, thank you very much.
Thanks, Ruth.
Thank you.
Thanks, Miranda. Lovely to see everyone.